Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day, there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I want to start with a quote that is on my guest's website. Work should fuel the human spirit, not drain it. So we are going to have such a great discussion today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Rob Leone to our program today. Welcome, Rob. How are you?
I am terrific, Deb, and thanks for having me today.
Great. Well, let me tell folks just a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into this. So Dr. Rob Leone is a professor of human resource development at Idaho State University and the co-founder of Black River Performance Management. With over 20 years of experience in leadership, organizational development, and performance improvement, Rob is recognized for his innovative, human-centered approach to developing stronger leaders and healthier organizations. Holding a PhD in training and performance improvement, he draws on workplace psychology and behavioral science to simplify leadership complexities and provide practical, evidence-based strategies that drive meaningful results. Rob has appeared on over 40 podcasts, that's 41, has been featured in TD Magazine for his work on humanistic leadership, and has authored numerous academic publications. Celebrated for revolutionizing leadership development and organizational culture, Rob's work equips leaders with a comprehensive lens and suite of approaches that are future-proofing organizations across industries. We will have a link in the show notes to his ebook, The Science and Strategy of Soul, Practical Models for Real-World Business Success. So again, Rob, welcome.
Thank you once again for having me.
Great. Well, I always like to ask my guests, and I know it's cliche, but how is it that you got to where you are today?
Yeah, it's such a, after being on several podcasts, you get this frequently. And I grin as I say this. I hope that comes through because someone once asked me actually as far back as high school, and I said, look, I certainly wasn't the least likely to succeed, but I'm not sure I was much too far off from that.
Oh dear.
So
oh no.
It's been a wonderful journey and a lot of hard work and just uncovery, right? Like in discovery. Like I talk to clients when we often do warm-ups and icebreakers with people who say, hey, how did you end up in this position? Because it's so true for so many of us that we had no idea what that destination is going to look like. So it's been a path with a lot of leadership, actually applied leadership, apply management, academics, then realizing that there's more to what it is we're doing in industry. So on to a doctorate, and then keeping my one foot in industry, really using what I've learned to help contribute. Just to your points, your kickoff of this, of how to create, a better work experience, a better environment, getting back to the model, work should fuel this human spirit, not drain. How to being in a position to really make a difference for people so that they can live their best life. And another way to think about it is that at the end of the day, they go home with their fuel tank still full to be with the people they love, things they want to do, as opposed to beaten up and drained and dreading coming back next day. So it's been an interesting journey, and I'm not sure what the future holds, but as long as it continues to be fun, that's kind of one of the main measures right now. What's the fun factor of anything? I'm going to do it.
I love it. And the thing that we hear so much, and I'm sure it's, one of the main things that you hear too is work. Bleh. They dread Monday morning. And I don't care if they're the business owner, an executive, or an employee. They dread Monday mornings. And by about noon on Friday, they're getting real excited, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't used to be that way. is there something that has caused this switch? Why do you think it is that we're like, oh God, I got to go to work?
Well, I think we have two different things going on. We clearly we have numerous things going on,
Right.
but two different things. One of the things is, and we saw a lot of this during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
how we talk about experiences start to reframe our
Mm-hmm.
experiences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so this concept of, oh, I'm always busy, we
Right.
start to embody that
Mm-hmm.
physiologically. Our
Mm-hmm.
body starts to
Mm-hmm.
demonstrate
Mm-hmm.
stress
Mm-hmm.
according to that, which isn't necessarily accurate. We might actually not be busy. It's funny when you see
Mm-hmm.
employees that complain about they have too much to do
Mm-hmm.
and they're super busy, yet they seem to have time to do all these things that are not centered for
Right.
the
They're
business and not
wandering the
centered,
hall.
yeah,
They're
distracting other people,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's an element of that, just as we've seen some deterioration in
Mm-hmm.
terms of cultural
Mm-hmm.
pieces outside of work. I think we're moving in certain directions there. The other side of it too is that I can only speak to the years I've worked in a workforce because I don't know what it was like before that. But even during this time, the workforce has become more complex.
Mm-hmm.
People have become
Mm-hmm.
more complex, and people, we live in a much more consumeristic society
Mm-hmm.
now in terms of options. We've
Mm-hmm.
always been consumers, but we have a lot more options. And that is flowing into how we
Mm-hmm.
see how we want to spend our time,
Right.
how we want to
Mm-hmm.
work, things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot going on. And for
Mm-hmm.
that business owner, they have to balance their
Mm-hmm.
own interests, their own ambitions, their
Mm-hmm.
business's ambitions.
Mm-hmm.
And then many of them didn't
Mm-hmm.
sign up for the people part of it, of the people they
Right.
employed. And so
I
they
just
carry
wanted to
that
design
burden too.
widgets. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, there's some baggage that comes along
Mm-hmm.
with that, and that baggage are the people
Mm-hmm.
that make it work for your organization.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where we kind of slide in and try to provide
Mm-hmm.
some clarity, because you don't have to carry the whole thing on your own.
Right.
But if you are going to carry a lot of it,
Mm-hmm.
there's some tools and tricks,
Mm-hmm.
or use the term hacks,
Mm-hmm.
to help you be more
Mm-hmm.
effective in doing exactly that. And
Right.
so, lots of everything changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we know,
Mm-hmm.
and so I don't know. We're in a
Mm-hmm.
tough space for a variety of different reasons, and
Mm-hmm.
I think the more we talk about it, and I suspect
Mm-hmm.
your listeners, your followers,
Mm-hmm.
there are people that are open to that and they realize
Mm-hmm.
that this is happening. So there's a group of us that's already drinking the Kool-Aid that we
Mm-hmm.
need to find some
Mm-hmm.
resolution.
Right.
But I think we need to continue to broaden these
Mm-hmm.
conversations
Mm-hmm.
at a larger level.
Mm-hmm.
Because even think about it, as a business owner, I might really love my business, but it doesn't mean my staff does,
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
they're there for the paycheck
Mm-hmm.
or for the quality of
Mm-hmm.
life. And so it's important for us to
Mm-hmm.
realize that just because we might listen to your podcast and believe these things and do
Mm-hmm.
self growth
Mm-hmm.
stuff, development, doesn't mean that they're
Mm-hmm.
necessarily a know it even
Mm-hmm.
exists,
Mm-hmm.
finds it interesting, all those things.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think there is definitely that we manifest things, right? If
Oh
we
yeah.
think, ugh, I got to go to work,
Yeah.
it's not going to matter how much fun we have or all of those things
Yep.
because we're kind of looking for the negatives, right?
Yeah.
And so why not wake up on Monday morning and go, I get to go to
Yeah.
work. Or, even those people like me who own my own business, I get to do what I want
Hmm.
to do rather than I have to.
Right. Yeah. One of my favorite little philosophies books is
Mm-hmm.
the fish philosophy, I'm sure you're familiar
Mm-hmm.
with. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that I've carried on forever is this concept of choose your attitude,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And how you choose to be is often
Mm-hmm.
going to guide you in that
Mm-hmm.
direction. And that's a great example of that.
Right. Right. Let's take just a little bit of a step back. How do you define a leader and or leadership?
So, good. I'm glad you asked that one, as opposed to what's the difference between leader and manager? It's like, oh my gosh, we only have an hour, right?
Yeah, they may or may not be the same person, and
Right,
frequently they're
exactly.
not. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a leader, the role of the leader, or as the definition of leadership, is to
Mm-hmm.
create the conditions for your people to be
Mm-hmm.
successful, and that includes the need and opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
look ahead,
Mm-hmm.
as well as remaining attuned to what it is they
Mm-hmm.
need, so that while they might not even be privy to where we're headed, that they're ready for where we're
Mm-hmm.
headed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So a rather simplistic
Mm-hmm.
view.
Right. But you did bring something up, and we talk about this on the program a lot, is just because somebody has a title, they are not necessarily the leader. And and like you said, manager and leader, well, that may or may not be the same person.
Yeah.
And the bad part is frequently it's not.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I agree. I wish we can move
Mm-hmm.
beyond that conversation of
Mm-hmm.
the dichotomy of the
Mm-hmm.
two,
Mm-hmm.
because the most successful managers are also leaders, right?
Right.
And it's a part of,
Mm-hmm.
but I understand how we wordsmith and say,
Mm-hmm.
look, they're shuffling tasks
Mm-hmm.
versus, but
Mm-hmm.
they also have to lay the
Mm-hmm.
foundation and create the
Right.
opportunities and
Mm-hmm.
cultivate and
Mm-hmm.
nurture people to go in a
Mm-hmm.
certain direction. But you
Mm-hmm.
are right. What I'm more, I tend to spend more time looking at is the positional versus other types of power and leadership. So,
Okay.
the peer-to-peer leadership
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
very, to your point,
Mm-hmm.
you might have a manager that's really ineffective in terms of
Mm-hmm.
leading others,
Mm-hmm.
but they're keeping the place together, they're keeping it afloat,
Right.
but
Yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
the colleagues or the
Mm-hmm.
peers are the ones that are actually
Mm-hmm.
wielding the leadership. And as long as you're in good graces with
Mm-hmm.
each other,
Mm-hmm.
it works out
Mm-hmm.
well. But, these all have their
Mm-hmm.
different opportunities
Mm-hmm.
to play a role in a
Mm-hmm.
culture
Mm-hmm.
and to help the organization accomplish its outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like this view that the leaders are super important to the success of
Mm-hmm.
the organization as opposed to the employees.
Mm-hmm.
They all play a super
Right.
important
Mm-hmm.
role. And in fact, you want great organizational success, you need the leaders to stop delegating and become more
Mm-hmm.
facilitative than telling people what to
Mm-hmm.
do. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's how do we pull all the talent in our
Mm-hmm.
team together to
Mm-hmm.
accomplish what it is we want to accomplish?
Right. And as you were saying that, I remember long ago, I had a job where the owner of the company was not a nice man. I mean, he yelled, he threw things. I
Yeah.
mean, and I remember and he swore a lot. And this was back when you're an HR person. This is back when,
I
you can
swear a
still,
lot too.
yeah, well, but not at employees.
Right,
And
right, right.
and I told him, because I knew that, and I was his office manager. I was the person, pretty much. I'm going to put this in my little air quotes, the leader, right? Um,
Hmm.
and I told him one time, I said, you get to call me the B word once. And I said, you call me that twice and I own your company. And he knew that I would, and now like I said, this is long enough ago, they would, I don't even know who I could have complained to,
Right.
but yeah, and he was just one of those. But the people that I worked with were so much fun. I loved working with them. And we actually had to interact with him so infrequently that
Yeah.
and that was the thing. He traveled a lot, but he would do things like, we opened at 8. He'd call at 7:55 to make sure we
Yeah.
were there, or 5:05. And it was like, really, and I remember telling somebody during COVID, he said that he didn't trust his employees were going to do the work. And I said, so when they were under your thumb and in the office, did you trust them? And he kind of paused. And I said, because there's only two answers. If the
Hmm.
answer was yes, then you can probably still trust them now. And I said, but if that answer was no, then you have a totally different problem. You know?
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, you're right.
but yeah, I enjoyed what I was doing. But it did finally reach the point where it was like, no, I cannot put up with this man any longer.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is sometimes the work environment is just, you just can't do it because the person at the top, the power
Yeah.
person, the whatever you want to call it, just makes life difficult.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was running some workshops in the last couple of weeks in Alaska, and this came up frequently with some different groups. Like, how do I take what I'm learning here
Mhm.
and apply to my leader? So managing up.
Yeah, how do I
And
make them be right?
yeah, I'm learning this. They need to learn
Mhm.
this, right?
Mhm.
And the tough thing is that, okay, so if the leader has good intentions and good heart,
Mhm.
but they're just crispy and hard on the
Mhm.
outside,
Right.
your energy, your enthusiasm, your compassion for your job and for
Mhm.
your team will really
Mhm.
kind of rise
Mhm.
up, and it'll be influential,
Mhm.
and it's powerful in
Mhm.
influencing them. If that person's not of those
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
characteristics, then you might just have to find
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else to be. Unfortunately,
Right.
take your good
Mm-hmm.
energy and your talents
Mm-hmm.
elsewhere because
Mm-hmm.
there's only so much we can do. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
shame. It really does stink when you have a team
Mm-hmm.
that you really actually
Mm-hmm.
love and
Right.
care about and you've grown
Mm-hmm.
together and you celebrated births and
Mm-hmm.
families and all sorts of things
Mm-hmm.
together and then all of a sudden you're like I have to leave here because I can't
Right.
deal with
He threw
that
a chair at
anymore.
me.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
acceptable. It's
Mm-hmm.
unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think one of the things, and you mentioned this, is the word motivation. Can people be motivated even if they don't like what they're doing?
So, so here's my response to even if they do like what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
they can't be motivated.
This is true.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you made reference to the
Mm-hmm.
book, and the book refers to some of the leadership
Mm-hmm.
models, and,
Mm-hmm.
and one of our motivation models, which is based off of
Mm-hmm.
current science,
Mm-hmm.
um, goes along the lines that I can cultivate this, I could bring the best out of you, but in the end of the day, you're the one that's responsible for
Right.
your own
You have to decide to
motivation.
do it. Mm-hmm.
And so many people
Mm-hmm.
aren't even aware of that,
Mm-hmm.
so they're not even deciding, just
Mm-hmm.
automatically or autonomically going through
Mm-hmm.
things. And so um, motivation's a tricky thing, but
Mm-hmm.
we could certainly suck the life out of people, can't we?
Mm-hmm.
Like to
Right.
that point, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That we can pull it out of them,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't push it in them.
Mm-hmm.
But we
Right.
help facilitate it.
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge is when we talk about motivation, people aren't on the same page as to what
Mm-hmm.
motivation is.
Right.
You look at all
Right.
these other industries
Mm-hmm.
that if you have an industry expertise like
Mm-hmm.
engineering or
Mm-hmm.
accounting
Mm-hmm.
or healthcare, like a
Mm-hmm.
physician, regardless of what hospital you go to in the US and worldwide, the
Mm-hmm.
language is consistent
Mm-hmm.
for devices, tools, practices.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You get into this like management
Mm-hmm.
leadership area, there's no
Mm-hmm.
common,
Mm-hmm.
understanding of most of the terminology. In the academic arena, there is, and that's what we
Mm-hmm.
agree on and
Mm-hmm.
subscribe to. But in the industry side, so when we talk about motivation, if you and I were colleagues or one of us was a
Mm-hmm.
superior and we're talking about motivation and what
Mm-hmm.
makes the difference to us, we might not ever understand each other
Mm-hmm.
because our lens and framework to
Right.
what we mean by
Mm-hmm.
this is uniquely
Mm-hmm.
tied to us
Mm-hmm.
and our extent or
Mm-hmm.
limitations of our
Mm-hmm.
learnings,
Right.
backgrounds, experiences, right? So like for example,
Mm-hmm.
we know people talk about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation,
Mm-hmm.
but there's much more to it than that.
Mm-hmm.
And we get into that in that book to break it down because
Mm-hmm.
what people don't realize is that their good intentions. So for example,
Mm-hmm.
advice is
Mm-hmm.
actually demotivating.
Mm-hmm.
But but I'm trying to give you advice. It's out of the
Right. I'm
goodness
trying
of
to
my
help
heart.
you be a better
I
person,
care for
whatever.
you.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't want you to I earned the
Mm-hmm.
lumps. I don't want you to have to experience it, but
Right.
there's different
Mm-hmm.
strategies here
Mm-hmm.
of how to do this so that it actually doesn't
Mm-hmm.
demotivate someone, that it
Mm-hmm.
helps nurture
Mm-hmm.
and stimulate high
Mm-hmm.
quality
Mm-hmm.
motivation.
Right. And I think so many people think that motivation is a thing,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to pay you more. I'm going to give you more
Exactly.
vacation days, things like
Yeah.
that. Or, we're going to do, birthday cake Friday,
Yeah.
and it's like, I'm not sure that's a true motivation thing,
No,
especially if
it's
it's,
not.
we're, whether you like it or not, we're having cake on Friday, right?
Yeah. Well, I could tell you firsthand, we have college kids and high school
Mhm,
kids, and they are so caught up with
mhm,
those externalized
mhm.
things,
Right.
what people
Mhm,
are wearing, what people
mhm,
are driving, and
mhm,
all these things, and they're not sustainable.
mhm,
Pay, bonuses are
mhm,
good in the short
mhm,
run, but eventually you still don't get paid enough.
mhm,
You hear that language, right? Like,
mhm,
so it's a
mhm,
symptom of something else that's going
mhm,
on in the organization or
mhm,
in the self.
mhm. Right. And I think that's the thing you mentioned. It's a symptom. And so you have to figure out what is going wrong.
Yeah.
And then of course that varies, right? Person A says, "Whoa, I like it here." Person B goes, "There." But it's because right, they have different expectations, maybe is the way to put it.
Yeah.
So when a company calls you in and says, "Hey, we think we've got a lot of turnover, uh, you know, products are having errors, customer service is horrible." how do you work with an organization to
Sure.
kind of figure out what is going on wrong?
Yeah. Yeah. So depending on the nuance of that
Mhm,
conversation on the first on at the
mhm,
surface, that gives me a lot of
mhm,
insight in terms of where we're going next. So
mhm.
I really want to know more about what's going on with the product,
Right.
where's it breaking
Mhm,
down, the timing, the stuff
mhm,
like that. Is this across the organization or
mhm,
is this only in a product line?
mhm,
And so we work through where these deficiencies are
mhm,
existing. From there, depending on what I discover, I might get into focus groups and
mhm,
even on-site walkthroughs and
mhm,
observations
mhm,
and group meetings to learn more about
mhm,
what's happening, right? Because the biggest thing to
mhm.
remember is that the person that's calling you out is really close to the issue.
Right.
And so they see the symptoms
Mhm,
of
mhm,
the problems, right? Poor production, poor
mhm,
customer service,
mhm,
but they're often too close to have the perspective to
mhm,
understand what's actually at the root cause
mhm,
contributing factors
mhm,
to these things.
mhm.
And so it's wonderful that they actually do reach out. That's the step in the right
Right.
direction because they aren't positioned. Most
Mhm,
people, just like I can't fix a marketing campaign, I need to
mhm,
call someone.
mhm.
They really can't fix that.
Right.
Most
Mhm.
people's,
If they
you're
could, they
hired
would
in your
have.
right,
Mhm,
and you're hired into a role as a
mhm,
skilled craft
mhm,
person, and we've got to acknowledge what our
mhm,
limits are.
mhm.
So, we talk about this with different people. You're going to pay for it either on the front end or the back end.
Right.
You can
Mhm,
put that investment in to develop that
mhm,
culture, future-proof the organization,
mhm,
cultivate a culture that brings more kind of levity,
mhm,
joy, aspirations, which then leads to
mhm,
harder effort, work,
mhm,
stuff like that. Or if you don't, you're going to be replacing people
mhm,
at a much higher
mhm,
rate and much higher expense.
mhm,
And you might actually be backing yourself into some lawsuits because of
mhm.
things happening in the work environment.
Right.
So
Right.
that's a good question, though, because we do see that often that they reach out, but the key there is that they're saying, look,
Mhm,
I'm good at what I do. I just need some
mhm,
assistance to really
mhm.
take this to the next level.
Right.
And then we're happy to be a part of that.
Mhm. Right. And you mentioned the culture, and I think there are so many people that go, "Ugh, we don't need a company culture. Why don't we they just come and they do the work?" My last main job that I had for someone, I worked
Hmm.
in a large organization. When I was there, they were the seventh largest publicly held corporation in the world.
Wow.
And but all these little divisions, right? Because they just gobbled
Mhm.
up companies. And so I worked technically for four of those companies that they acquired. And we talked, and I was in the communications department. So, and which sometimes did and sometimes didn't report to HR. That's, kind of always one of those fun things. Were we marketing? Were we HR? Oh, I report to the CEO, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Um, but, we were often, concerned with the culture, and so then what they would do is we would have team building exercises, and I hated those. I'm sorry, I don't care how much I trust you, I'm not falling off of a ladder to have you catch me. You
Right,
could
right.
sneeze and I go thud, right? um and it was, but it was interesting because we did have a culture, and I think that is the thing, companies always have a culture.
Yeah. By
you know
design
and
or default, it's going to
Right,
happen.
right. And so ours was pretty open, and you knew that you could actually walk into the CEO's office and talk to him, and things like that. And then it changed.
Yep.
And they did away with with all of the team building and just all of those things. And and they had reasons for it, but
Hmm.
it was incredible what the turnover all of a sudden became. Because to the employees, it was like, well, we're not valued any longer. But I think the biggest thing was nobody told us why.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, the other perspective that comes to mind when you're talking about this is that it wasn't the team building that necessarily shaped the culture. It was
Mhm.
the effort and the belief
Yeah,
behind
they thought it
the
was
willingness
important.
to spend that
Mhm,
money, to
mhm,
do the cake
mhm,
party, to whatever that is.
mhm,
And they had a level of
mhm,
commitment to it.
mhm,
And that's what employees
mhm,
feel, right? It's
mhm,
like when you walk in a room and you know if people are on your side or
mhm,
a different side, like
mhm,
you could feel that energy.
mhm,
And like I said, go home at the end of the day with fuel still in your tank. That's you pull that commitment out and you're reducing that energy, that reserve. People are just using it all up at work and then going
Right.
home and not
Kicking
having
the
the
dog
best
and yelling at the
behaviors.
kid.
Right. I'm gonna have one extra cocktail tonight because I have to go back to work
Mhm.
tomorrow, which
Mhm.
then, leads to other
Right.
issues. And
Mhm.
so, but it's a very real thing, and
Mhm.
I've been in those positions
Mhm.
myself. And but yeah, change does matter and it
Mhm.
makes a difference. And to the point of we need to be more mindful in many
Mhm.
instances of what change looks like.
Mhm.
What can we do on the front end to
Mhm.
position the organization to be
Right.
successful after the change? So there's actually transitional things that we'll do with groups to
Mhm.
prepare them for, say, a new president
Mhm.
or a new CEO or a new director,
Mhm.
because too many organizations say, look, we're not going to do anything. We're
Mhm.
just going to wait till the new hire comes in and then it's their show. They get to
Right.
choose what they
Yeah.
want to do.
Mhm.
And now they're starting from behind, dealing
Mhm.
with issues that were in the
Mhm.
past that are not their issues, that
Mhm.
they don't care about.
Mhm.
And but the other staff is still
Mhm.
living in the past. So anyways, there's some
Mhm.
transitional pieces that
Mhm.
that are really important here to so you even take that shift that you're talking about,
Mhm.
and part of that is just because of the magnitude of the
Mhm.
organization,
Mhm.
right? But there's probably things that could have been done, like you said,
Mhm.
they didn't know the
Mhm.
why, or they didn't even experience it on the front end that
Mhm.
something was coming,
Mhm.
and just become mindful and
Mhm.
aware of the uncertainty
Mhm.
that
Right.
exists, and then creating opportunities for
Mhm.
like lunch and learns and gets
Mhm.
together that don't cost anything
Mhm.
for people to kind of
Mhm.
kind of work through that
Right.
space together.
Right. Well, and I tell people, nature abhors a vacuum. If you don't,
Yeah.
even if you tell them, the reason why, you know, but if you don't give enough information and people are, going, maybe we're under financial constraints, or ooh, this new boss is, whatever it is, we make it up. And we
Yeah.
almost never make it up in a wow, this is going to be fantastic way, right?
Right.
We're like, oh my God, it's
Yeah.
horrible and awful. And so I would tell the people that I worked with, even if it's a negative, it's better than a nothing.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's yeah, people need something to work
Mm-hmm.
with because it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like your vision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have that section of that. It's not quite the blind spot, but
Mm-hmm.
it's this periphery
Mm-hmm.
that your brain fills in the color scheme
Right.
for it based on
Mm-hmm.
what's
Mm-hmm.
around you. It doesn't actually see what's there,
Right.
but
Mm-hmm.
it's a mechanism to fill in space.
Mm-hmm.
We do the same thing in the absence of
Mm-hmm.
information,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sometimes like, oh, he didn't call me back after this job
He doesn't
interview.
like
He
me.
does,
He hated
right,
me. Yeah.
exactly. So sometimes we are our own worst enemies,
Oh,
but
yes. Mm-hmm.
but to your point, it's
Mm-hmm.
important that people need to
Mm-hmm.
be a part of
Mm-hmm.
stuff,
Mm-hmm.
not everything. And it's also
Mm-hmm.
important to communicate that, look, as your leader, I'm gonna bring you as
Mm-hmm.
long with as much
Mm-hmm.
information
Right.
as I can, but
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be at some points
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not going to be able to talk
Mm-hmm.
about things.
Right.
But whenever possible,
Mm-hmm.
I want to share this with you
Yes.
and get you to be a part of
Yes.
this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Telling people I don't know, but I'll
yeah,
get it to you when I can. We're like, okay.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right?
Mm-hmm.
How much safer is that than, and that's a classic junior leader move where they're just like
Mm-hmm.
they make up the information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
they have this self-imposed pressure,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe externally imposed, but
Mm-hmm.
highly self-imposed pressure that I need to demonstrate that I'm the leader, I'm
Mm-hmm.
the boss,
Right. So I'm going to
I
fill in
know
those
everything.
blanks. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And that's, that's just that's stuff that
Mm-hmm.
we're imposing on ourselves
Mm-hmm.
that are actually not helping us. So to your
Right.
point, and I like to do,
Mm-hmm.
I like 24 hours. So
Mm-hmm.
whether it's my students at the university or people I'm working with, it's like, look, I'll get back to you in 24
Mm-hmm.
hours. And,
Mm-hmm.
going back to what's that definition of that
Mm-hmm.
leader, that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
aspects of it is I don't need to know all the answers,
Right.
but I need to know
Mm-hmm.
who knows the answer.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the nature of my
Mm-hmm.
network in the
Mm-hmm.
organization?
Right.
What's the nature of my
Mm-hmm.
relationships with the people in the organization?
Mm-hmm.
So I could reach out to them and say,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, Jim, Susie has a question
Mm-hmm.
about this. I just don't know how
Mm-hmm.
to answer it.
Right.
What do you
Mm-hmm.
got for me?"
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Done.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And it does not in any way make you lesser. I think that's the other thing is so many people are like, well, I can't ask anybody questions because I'm the boss. I'm supposed to know it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Yeah. I talk about this in terms of new hires many
Mm-hmm.
times,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's the boss or new hires. But So, okay, a couple things. You hire someone new,
Mhm.
they don't really know what they don't know.
Right. Even
And
if they've
so,
researched all that stuff, yeah,
yeah,
they're still. Mhm,
it's new, right?
mhm,
So we talk about this in
mhm,
terms of one of the big problems leaders demonstrate in
mhm.
organizations. So let's just say, Deb, I'm hiring you
Okay.
and you made it through the selection criteria.
Mhm,
And you know what? I'm like, Deb, here's your name tag. Here are your keys. You got this. I believe in you.
mhm.
And let me know what questions you have. So
Right.
coming back to my first statement, you don't know what questions you have
Right.
because you don't know
Right.
what you don't know yet.
Mhm,
So let's begin
mhm,
with that. Then the next thing is that we do you a huge disservice
mhm.
by giving you this cheerleader kind of approach. Like,
Right.
you got this, Deb,
Mhm.
when in reality, you're like, I hope this works out well, right?
Yeah. I
And
need to know
so
where the
there's,
bathroom is, or
right,
Mhm,
exactly.
mhm,
And so it's important that I, as your leader,
mhm,
I mean, using
mhm,
this word attunement more and more.
mhm,
I'm attuned to what's going on
mhm,
and what you're feeling.
mhm.
It doesn't mean I have to spend a huge amount of time, but
Right.
I need to keep a
Mhm,
connection with you, or a mentor
mhm,
keeps a connection,
mhm,
or we
mhm,
create scaffolding or whatever it is. Because if I understand that you're not inclined to ask me
mhm.
questions, I can better navigate that space.
Right.
And let me
Mhm,
tell you,
mhm,
why are you not inclined to
mhm,
ask me questions?
mhm.
For several reasons. And the first reason is because I hired you.
Yeah, I don't
I
want to
hired
admit that.
you
Yeah, mhm, mhm.
exactly.
You're a scary
And
person. Mhm,
or no, even I hired you, I took a chance with you,
mhm,
I believed in you, and you
mhm.
don't want to let me down, right? Like,
Right.
very
Mhm,
honest
mhm,
things. But the reality is I've been in that same
mhm.
position.
Right.
And
Mhm,
I will not judge you or
mhm,
demean you if you're asking
mhm,
questions.
mhm,
And it's just know that it's a
mhm,
supportive environment. The
mhm,
other reason why you're slow to ask
mhm.
questions is that you have this internal pressure that you want to be successful, and part
Right.
of your view of
Mhm,
success is maintaining that job
mhm,
so that you can share with your
mhm,
family and
mhm,
friends that you're doing a good job,
mhm,
you're contributing to society.
mhm,
So it's a real,
mhm,
this is why we really leverage the psychology of behavior
mhm,
in the work we do, is
mhm,
because there's these small little things that we can look
mhm,
at and retrain how we
mhm,
supervise, how we
mhm,
lead, how we engage people, or to this point,
mhm,
how we onboard people. I
mhm,
just wrote a blog the other
mhm,
day that onboarding should be more like going to a resort than
mhm.
what it is in most
Right.
organizations.
Here, watch
Because
this video, read this notebook.
exactly, right? So, but as opposed to, this is where the drinks
Mhm,
are, this is where the fun
mhm,
stuff is, these
mhm,
are where the cool people,
mhm,
right? Things like
mhm,
that. So, anyways, it just there's these things that if we could remove some of the business,
mhm,
just this noise
mhm,
in business environment, and focus more on
mhm,
what people need,
mhm,
how people are ultimately
mhm,
foundationally similar,
mhm,
and then work through
mhm,
those things and
mhm,
support them in those
mhm,
manners, people will be much more
mhm.
successful, much happier, much more energy.
Right. And I was wondering, as you said that, how many people are afraid, and I'm saying this from an HR perspective,
Hmm.
what if ask the wrong question, whether it's the employee
Yeah.
or the boss, am I crossing a boundary? Am I breaking the law? And, all of those various things. And so we just say nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so let's talk about that for a moment too, because one of the other things we don't do well in many organizations is onboard and integrate.
Mhm,
And when people are onboarding into organizations, to your point, video watching,
mhm,
benefits overview, like,
mhm.
stuff's important, but this is
Right.
not what a new hire cares
No.
about. The number one
Mhm,
priority of a new hire is socialization
mhm,
and meeting people and connecting
mhm,
with people. And so if you're entirely remote shop, you have a little
mhm,
more of a burden in
mhm,
that area. But by me socializing them,
mhm,
building that into
mhm,
our culture,
mhm,
I'm offsetting a lot of other
mhm,
problems in other areas. I'm
mhm,
creating rapport between people.
mhm,
I'm actually positioning the leader to be much more
mhm,
positioned to lead
mhm,
than manage.
mhm,
And then part of the byproduct of this is that the
mhm,
people within the system
mhm,
start holding each other accountable in a very kind,
mhm,
compassionate,
mhm.
generous way.
Right. And I think the other thing that people are concerned about is, if I'm hovering, or, all those things, then they're going to think
Yeah,
I'm a micromanager,
right.
and so again, we do nothing. We think, well, they're smart. I hired them. They've got that degree. They have that
Yeah.
experience. They should be able to figure it out themselves. I don't want them to think I'm looking over their shoulder all the time.
Yeah, what a complex. This is an hour podcast in and of itself.
I
So actually,
know,
just
right?
before this,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
just published a blog on the concept of when autonomy
Hmm.
becomes neglect.
Hmm.
Because I
hmm
really stirred the pot
Right.
at a
Hmm.
conference last week with
Hmm.
a group because I said, what if I tell you that your practice of giving autonomy to your
Hmm.
employees is actually neglectful and
Hmm.
creating problems? And that was
Yeah.
all up in arms. And it's
Hmm.
like people should be
Hmm.
trusted. People, and the issue is not about trust.
Yeah, they're different things.
Yeah, the
Hmm.
issue is about whether or not they're capable.
Hmm.
Really, that's what it
Hmm.
comes down to. And
Right.
we have this really weird hang up with autonomy and micromanagement
Hmm.
that that's really interfering our
Hmm.
ability to work with each other.
Hmm.
And we need to resolve that. We
Hmm.
need to work through it. We need to
Hmm.
understand what it
Hmm.
is. When's the appropriate time
Hmm.
to use both
Hmm.
micromanagement and autonomy?
Right.
When
Hmm.
is it
Hmm.
inappropriate? And get the people
Hmm.
on the same
Hmm.
page because then they have a voice.
Hmm.
Because you're right, people come in with these preconceived notions,
Hmm.
past experiences in other
Hmm.
organizations, so
Hmm.
some sort of baggage as it
Right.
relates to that,
Hmm.
and they just don't know how to navigate that
Hmm.
space. And how would they? Like
Hmm.
once again, there the physician goes
Hmm.
through training
Hmm.
development
Hmm.
in his or her craft
Hmm.
that's universal across locations.
Hmm. Hmm.
This leadership stuff, this management stuff has no universality at it, right? In
No.
it right now.
Hmm.
And so we don't even know what we
Hmm.
mean when we say
Hmm.
autonomy or what we mean when
Hmm.
we say micromanagement. It's
Hmm.
interesting when I talk about micromanagement, I always say there's a good kind. Did you know that? And they're like, no way.
Right. No,
But
because we're thinking of them, hovering
yeah,
over our shoulder and
but they can't even define it to begin
right.
with. So
Hmm.
I have to define it and then
Hmm.
clarify this really is the bad type of
Hmm.
micromanagement
Hmm.
because of X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
But it just goes to show that it's very internal. Like
Hmm.
it's one of these like brain heart
Hmm.
connections. My students are going through this week. They have to share their research with two people and
Ah.
actually present it to them and
Ooh.
articulate it.
Hmm.
And they think it's no problem until
Hmm.
they do it and they realize, well, it made sense in my head and it made
Right.
sense in my heart,
Hmm.
but I can't get the words out.
Hmm.
And that's part of it is that
Hmm.
we developed through these. We had to
Hmm.
learn how to
Hmm.
drive. My
Hmm.
mechanic had to learn how to fix my car.
Right.
My
Hmm.
surgeon had to learn how
Hmm.
to fix my knee.
Hmm.
We can learn all this stuff
Hmm.
too, and we
Hmm.
should be. It's our
Right.
obligation as leaders and
Hmm.
organizations to bring
Hmm.
these tools to
Hmm.
people to both
Hmm.
enhance the organization, but also
Hmm.
the take it home of it
Hmm.
effect is huge,
Hmm.
that it could enhance,
Hmm.
improve the quality of their life
Right.
outside of work.
Right. And I think we also need to remember each employee is different.
Hmm.
Some of them need you to be looking over their shoulder.
Absolutely.
Until they've learned what it is. How many times has, and I used to hate this when I would ask somebody, how do I do X? And they'd
Yeah.
reach over me and go, typey, typey, typey. Okay, that's how you did it. And I went, huh?
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
and for some people that works. I needed to do it myself with them
Hmm.
saying, do this, do this, do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really is. And of course, that's what makes it a challenge for somebody who is
Yeah.
the leader, the boss, the whatever it is,
Yeah.
because you don't want to have to deal with each person individually, right? You just want them to all fit into this little box.
Right.
And
Yes.
and because I don't have time to do that. Well, folks,
Yeah.
that's part of what being in charge or whatever it is figuring out. And even with communication styles, I'm sure you see this with your students, with everybody. Some of them want texts, some of them want
Yeah.
emails, some of them might actually want a phone call, although many of
Yeah.
them now have absolutely no idea what that what this little square thing does, because they
Right.
just play games on it and text messages. But each one is different, and we have to, I tell people I have to recognize that with my clients. Do
Yeah.
they want weekly reports? Do they
Yeah.
do better if I email them? Do they like phone calls? Does it make life a little bit more challenging? Well, initially, but it's better than having to redo things because they went, huh?
Yeah. No, you're right. There's so much truth and wisdom to all of that. One of the things I do, getting back to your person working over your shoulder and how people learn different and
Mhm.
need different approaches. One of the things that we do with our teams that we work
Mhm.
with we say, let's take out your job description
Okay.
and let's look at all of your duties.
Mm-hmm.
Now, write down the tasks you routinely do to
Mm-hmm.
accomplish those
Mm-hmm.
duties. Now, rate yourself 1 to 4,
Ah.
your level of competence,
Mm-hmm.
and 4 is high competence,
Mm-hmm.
1's low. And what I want you to understand is that you are not fully competent in this job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our fatal flaw, is that we
Mm-hmm.
grant people, we
Mm-hmm.
believe that I hired you, Deb, you're
Mm-hmm.
fully competent.
Mm-hmm.
When the reality is that you might be really competent
Mm-hmm.
in, say, graphic design,
Mm-hmm.
but not necessarily the budget system at our
Mm-hmm.
company or
Right.
the software process
Mm-hmm.
or routing it
Mm-hmm.
through the approval
Mm-hmm.
streams, right? And so based on what those task
Mm-hmm.
level needs are, we need to demonstrate a
Mm-hmm.
different level of leadership and
Mm-hmm.
intervention,
Mm-hmm.
right? So ideally with that keyboarding thing you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, for you, the approach probably would have been much better received if it was um, do one, show one. I sorry, teach one,
Right.
do one,
Mm-hmm.
show. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, let me do it for
Mm-hmm.
you. This is what it looks like. And once you
Then
give
you
it a
do it.
try, and I'll
Yes.
walk you
Mm-hmm.
through it,
Mm-hmm.
and now you tell me back
Mm-hmm.
what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
Right. Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's because your competence was low in
Mm-hmm.
that area. It was a
Mm-hmm.
1 maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and you needed a different level of support, or you didn't need autonomy in
Mm-hmm.
that instance. You
Mm-hmm.
needed actually
Mm-hmm.
hand-holding in that
Right.
instance so that we assure the
Mm-hmm.
accuracy, so
Mm-hmm.
you're free to go. You're
Mm-hmm.
smart, you're quick, you're going to
Right.
pick it up. I just
Right.
need to show you how to do it
Mm-hmm.
quicker. And to your point about leaders not wanting to take this differentiated
Mm-hmm.
approach with everyone,
Mm-hmm.
I was working with this group once doing goal planning and goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the managers said, Rob, I can't even think a week down the road, let alone a couple months or
Mm-hmm.
years to set goals.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why we're doing this, is speaking, not the goal setting, but
Mm-hmm.
working with this
Mm-hmm.
team, is that our overall work is to create a higher level of competency
Mm-hmm.
of your staff, because you
Mm-hmm.
as the leader is spending too much time managing their inefficiencies,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the fact that you talk about that mindset of I don't have time to deal with all these
Mm-hmm.
people, if we shift our thinking around that and we actually get them squared away and set up and
Mm-hmm.
let them feel supported earlier in the
Mm-hmm.
cycle, they actually make my life easier as the
Right.
leader,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not all consumed by what was actually troubleshooting
Mm-hmm.
resolution.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually now leading and advocating for our
Mm-hmm.
division.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And one of the other words that we kick around a lot is empowering, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's great. I mean, like I'm in Atlanta, the land of Chick-fil-A, right? And so they talk about the fact that they have empowered their employees to
Mhm.
do things, so and
Mhm.
I've tried this, right? It's the funniest thing in the world. They sell packages of 10 chicken nuggets or whatever
Yeah.
it is. If you go up and say, I want 1 chicken nugget, they're empowered to give that to you. Well, no, they're not empowered to do it. It's just they're told they can't do it. And so we get so caught up in this empowering that I think one of the big things that people have to know is it's okay to say, I don't know, or
Mhm.
I've got to go ask somebody. We're not saying
Absolutely.
I can't do my job. In fact, maybe we're saying we can do it better. To say, Rob, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Help.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. No, we need to raise the level of awareness around psychological safety, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the
Mm-hmm.
ability to dissent, to question,
Mm-hmm.
without fear of
Mm-hmm.
retribution or
Right.
retaliation,
Right.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
and that's often one of the actual root causes of why
Mm-hmm.
these things exist, where
Mm-hmm.
people don't feel empowered
Mm-hmm.
to ask questions,
Mm-hmm.
to reach out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of the area where
Mm-hmm.
we have our work cut out
Mm-hmm.
for us.
Right. Yeah. And the other word that we throw around a lot is delegate.
Yeah.
and I love that to you, that's not necessarily a good thing.
Correct.
And I mean, I have in my volunteer world, I have, a pretty responsible thing that I do, lots of tasks, lots of things. And I was whining to somebody, whine, I got too much to do. And she says, you just need to learn to delegate.
Right.
Now, that was good, because basically what she was saying is, Deb, you don't have to do it all.
Right. Right.
But it wasn't that I could just say, here, go do this, right? And I think that's the other catch is we might say, hey, we're going to delegate, and then it goes wrong because we never actually told them what to do, or all those things. It was just, here, Rob, you're
Or
going to
do
be in
they want
charge
to
of this
do
now.
it? Let's
Right.
talk about
Yeah.
volunteers, right?
Yeah.
So you raised a really interesting concept that you have these volunteers that are super interested
Mm-hmm.
and really missions
Mm-hmm.
focused when they volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, they want to be helpful,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't want to be bossed around.
Right.
But our risk is that
Mm-hmm.
we don't utilize
Mm-hmm.
them because we don't want to feel like we're abusing them. And so there's a
Right.
sweet
Mm-hmm.
spot in between,
Mm-hmm.
right? So delegation, in my opinion, is a junior leadership skill.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? It's because it's actually tied to levels of diminished levels of motivation
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I'm imposing it on you.
Right.
So instead, we need to recraft how
Mm-hmm.
we think about this and
Mm-hmm.
do this differently
Mm-hmm.
and facilitate those
Mm-hmm.
opportunities
Mm-hmm.
because then it's going to
Mm-hmm.
pique your levels of
Mm-hmm.
intrinsic motivation. And then you're going to
Right.
want to do
Mm-hmm.
more, add more
Mm-hmm.
effort, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And the same's true in all environments.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and but to your
Mm-hmm.
point, we have to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And and when I say it's a junior leadership strategy, it's because you think about first-time leaders,
Mm-hmm.
or whether it's first-time leaders in
Mm-hmm.
industry, period, or in new environments.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Right.
like I got to make sure this
Mm-hmm.
thing's going to be successful. The best way for me to ensure success is if I touch everything
Mm-hmm.
and then try to control everything. And that's just you gaining your sea legs, being more
Mm-hmm.
comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But what we need to evolve to is that I'm going to facilitate the
Mm-hmm.
sun. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to work with this crew, figure out what they're truly
Mm-hmm.
interested in, and let them take
Mm-hmm.
forward of the 10
Right.
items on my plate, right?
Right.
Stuff.
Right. And there is a very big difference between assigning somebody to do
Hmm.
something
Yeah,
and saying who wants to do this.
absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
somehow we've merged delegation into that. I'm going to assign you to do this because I'm sure you want to do it.
Right. Or I'm in a position of power
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to do what I tell you to
Right.
do
Mm-hmm.
because I'm the boss and I
Mm-hmm.
need you to do this. And you
Mm-hmm.
need to understand this is
Mm-hmm.
a part of the team effort. So you need to
Mm-hmm.
buy into it. But it doesn't work as clean
Mm-hmm.
as that because
Mm-hmm.
on one day, someone might be in a
Mm-hmm.
great mood and they're like, yeah, I'm happy to run
Mm-hmm.
with it. Let me
Right.
go.
Mm-hmm.
And on another day, they
Mm-hmm.
can't, the night before they had a
Mm-hmm.
fight with their significant
Mm-hmm.
other. They're not loving
Mm-hmm.
life right now. They're
Mm-hmm.
not loving work. And you delegate something
Mm-hmm.
to them without alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you might have some new problems on here.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, that goes back to when we were kids and or parents, right?
Hmm.
Why do I have to do that? Because I tell you to.
Right, right, exactly.
And yeah, I might do it, but I might do it grudgingly. I
Yeah,
might screw it up on purpose, right? That's always going to be a fun thing in a business.
yeah,
And so yeah, it's a tricky combination, but that comes back to the whole communication thing, right?
yeah,
I'm going to assign you to do this, but that's because I think you have the job skills to do it. What do I need to do to help you?
yeah. And
You
yeah,
know?
and I'll even tweak that just a little
Mm-hmm,
bit.
mm-hmm.
And I share this approach that, hey, Deb, I have something that I think might be of interest to you
Okay.
because of what your professional
Right.
skills
Mm-hmm,
are, your ambitions,
mm-hmm,
stuff like
mm-hmm,
that. Can I share it
mm-hmm,
with you?
mm-hmm,
Or I'd like to share it with you,
mm-hmm.
depending on how much time you have to
Right,
talk
right.
about this.
Mm-hmm,
And at least right off the bat, my wife just told me this earlier. She's like, why don't you try the alignment conversation instead of the opposed conversation? And so this is the alignment
mm-hmm,
conversation saying,
mm-hmm.
Deb, I think this might be something you're interested in.
Right,
If you're not, let me know.
right.
All of
Mm-hmm,
a sudden you're primed, your
mm-hmm,
mind is
mm-hmm,
opened and shifted in a different direction to be, oh, I'm going to be a part of a
mm-hmm,
solution here, as opposed
mm-hmm,
to now what?
mm-hmm. Right. And let's be honest, there are times where stuff has to be assigned. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's just that's the way things work. I don't care if you're 6 years old or
Yeah.
46.
Yeah.
Sometimes things just have to be assigned to you. And we could the funny thing is that we typically fall back on the 6-year old, right?
Yeah.
Why, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, we've only got about 10 minutes left. And so I'm curious, based on, the consulting and the work that you have done, have you seen a shift pre and post COVID? because people went off and they kind of did their own thing and they were, home based, and this was great because I could, work in my jammies and all of that stuff. And then, they're making me come back in the office. Have you seen a shift in how companies are handling things?
You know, we should have been ready for COVID. And this is why
Right.
we talk about future-proofing our
Hmm.
organizations and the stuff that we
Hmm.
do. We should have been ready for it before it
Hmm.
ever occurred.
Right.
And whether it
Because
was
things
COVID
happen.
or
Yeah.
an economic
Hmm.
collapse,
Hmm.
whatever the
Hmm.
issue is.
Hmm.
So now we weren't doing what we should have done
Hmm.
before. And then a crisis happened or a pandemic happened, and then we lost reins of the 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 horses or whatever
Hmm.
you want to be in
Hmm.
control of. And so we're seeing just this really
Hmm.
mix of back to work types
Hmm.
of things. In some instances, they're doing it well because the
Hmm.
level of trust and respect
Hmm.
and rapport was
Hmm.
high early on. We
Hmm.
socialized really
Hmm.
well early on. But then there's other areas that, to your point earlier about they didn't explain the why of all these
Hmm.
changes once they eliminated the team
Hmm.
building. That
Hmm.
conversation, people are just in the dark getting these
Hmm.
memos that say you need to be back. You need to stop
Right.
what you're doing
Yeah.
and be back next week. Like
Yeah. We've made the
you
decision. You have to come back.
if you're a parent of a a 5-year-old,
Hmm.
you've learned the trick that you just don't say we're leaving right now. We give them a
Hmm.
heads up and say you have
Yeah.
5 minutes and then we're
Yeah.
leaving.
Hmm.
And the difference it
Hmm.
makes,
Hmm.
right? So
Right.
something as simple as
Hmm.
that is not happening with a lot of
Hmm.
organizations. And
Right.
so there's some
Hmm.
conflict that relates
Hmm.
to that. So are things different? Every I'm going to be different today than I was yesterday. So
Right.
yes,
Hmm.
everything's always
Hmm.
different. But the other side of it too,
Hmm.
though, and I've worked with groups on this, is that you can't, your employees can't dictate and
Hmm.
run the operation strategy of
Hmm.
the organization. If this really is a viable
Hmm.
option, this hybrid, high
Hmm.
flex, or remote
Hmm.
options, or 100% brick
Hmm.
and mortar, whatever that is,
Hmm.
you got to make that decision for
Right.
you and your culture and
Hmm.
your
Hmm.
aspirations. But you, we can't have the people that are working for us demanding what the conditions of their
Hmm.
work will be
Right.
when it's outside of really the conditions
Hmm.
of work that we
Hmm.
need to ultimately be
Hmm.
responsible for.
Right.
So it's all over the place. It's
Hmm.
certainly quieted down in the last year, that's for sure.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
not getting those calls as much as I used to.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping that we're in a better place with
Hmm.
respect to that. Or the other side of it is people are just coming to grips that
Hmm.
this is
Hmm.
this is the
My
new
friend had it
reality.
happen to them, so it's going to be me. Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I feel bad for the
Hmm.
people that moved across country
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah, because they
you
were,
know,
assured that you could work remotely forever. Cool. I'm
yeah,
going to go out to the beach.
yeah.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
You're right. And
Hmm.
what was actually
Hmm.
communicated versus what they believed they heard
Hmm.
is probably very different. But
Right. Yeah. It was
that
probably somewhere in there. It might have said for 6 months you can,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um,
exactly.
so
So
go get an
yeah,
Airbnb. No, don't buy a
mm,
house.
right.
Mhm.
Exactly. So I
Mhm.
feel bad for people that's going to
Mhm.
upend their
Mhm.
life in that aspect.
Mhm.
But we're not meant to work for the same organization
Right.
in the sense of
Mhm.
when we think we're, you know,
Mhm.
we talk about this often with people that you pay someone enough,
Mhm.
you then take money off the table as it
Mhm.
relates to a motivation factor.
Mhm.
So it's no longer
Mhm.
externalized, it's
Mhm.
intrinsic now. So I've taken care of the pay.
Mhm.
But within 3, 4
Mhm.
years, let's just say you hired me at
Mhm.
X.
Mhm.
Well, within 3, 4 years, maybe I get married,
Right.
have a
Mhm.
kid,
Mhm.
buy a house,
Mhm.
maybe buy a boat, then
Mhm.
I got to buy gas. So my
Mhm.
my life
Mhm.
evolves,
Mhm.
but it might be evolving faster
Mhm.
than my compensation.
Mhm.
And so, and while I like working for you and I want to stay working for
Mhm.
you, the evolution of my
Mhm.
life is, I
Mhm.
don't want to really come across
Right.
cold or crass
Mhm.
here. It's not in your heart, you're
Mhm.
concerned and you want to
Mhm.
support me, but the reality of
Mhm.
maintaining the business
Mhm.
integrity is that this is just not how it
Mhm.
happens. If we
Right.
have an opportunity for
Mhm.
promotion and you've been a good
Mhm.
worker,
Right. Then
we'll
we'll do
move you
it.
into that
Mhm.
space. But I can't
Mhm.
just wait for,
Mhm.
sometimes we just need to move and move
Mhm.
on.
Mhm.
And actually,
Mhm.
when you move on, you grow, you learn new
Right.
systems,
Mhm.
new strategies,
Mhm.
and you're actually better for it
Mhm.
in the future.
Right. And it comes back to communication, right?
Yeah, it
You can't
does.
expect that your boss knows that you need more money
Yeah.
You got to tell them. And then if it's possible, or more likely if it's not possible, the boss just needs to say why.
Yep.
And I mean, usually that thing is, budget, right? I'd love
Yeah.
to pay you more, but we can't. But then it's like, okay, well, I can't do that, but is there something else we could do, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to leave at 3 every day so that you can get the kids after school? I mean,
Yep.
and so it's and I think that is one of the things that has changed more and more, maybe because of
Hmm.
COVID,
Yeah.
is we ask those questions.
Yep.
Whether you're the boss or whether you're the employee, we learned that word flexible and
Yeah.
all sorts of things. Is let's see what we can come up with, because companies know it is much easier to keep an employee than to hire somebody
Absolutely.
new, most of the time, right? There are those years it's like, don't let the door hit you, right?
Right.
But yeah, so we want to keep those good employees, and it comes back to that motivation thing, right? What
Hmm.
motivates them is leaving
Yeah.
early every day. Okay, well, I know you really liked working from home. Can you work in here 5 or how long's a week, right? Can you work in here
Yeah.
3 days a week and home too, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but and just be flexible, whether you're the boss or the employee.
Yeah. Absolutely. Flexibility and rapport, right? The
Mhm.
themes of
Right.
this show.
Yep, yep. Well, oh my gosh. Yeah, that hour just flew. I looked down and went, holy schmoly. And so I know that there are people, and that are thinking, you know, we need help. And so how do they reach you, and what are the services that you provide?
Sure. Okay, so if you want to connect with our company, our website is Black River, then the letter P for performance, and the letter M for
Mhm.
management.com. So blackriverpm.com. And what we do is we kind of have a broad service range from kind of individual level
Mhm.
development all the way through organization and
Okay.
strategy development. And so we believe that we could prioritize both
Hmm.
performance
Hmm.
and objective outcomes
Hmm.
as well as employee experience at the same
Hmm.
time. And so whether that's strategic planning, consulting, coaching, group training,
Hmm.
performance improvement initiatives, we cover all those.
Hmm.
So if you get on the website, info at
Hmm.
blackriverpm.com is an email,
Hmm.
and that will get you connected. Also on the
Okay.
website, you could just do contact us.
Hmm.
Also on the website, you'll be prompted if you're interested in downloading the free ebook
Hmm.
that covers a bunch of these models
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
language that we kind of refined today.
Hmm.
That's in there. You could
Hmm.
also connect with me on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
So on LinkedIn, it's Robert, and the
Hmm.
last name, even though it sounds like Leon,
Hmm.
it's spelled like lion, right,
Hmm.
Deb?
Hmm.
Yeah, I,
I know it's in
I
big
always
letters.
I know.
Leon.
I know, right? So find me on there.
Hmm.
And and we, even if you're not needing,
Hmm.
even if you're just
Hmm.
curious, reach out to us.
Hmm.
We talk to
Hmm.
people all the time for free.
Right.
If you go onto our webpage under
Hmm.
Leader U,
Hmm.
there's blogs.
Ah.
And so you
Hmm.
learn about, so
Hmm.
today I put out the one about autonomy.
Hmm.
Last week I put out
Hmm.
one out about onboarding. We have
Hmm.
motivation, feedback,
Hmm.
communication
Hmm.
blogs in there. But then also this podcast, as well as
Hmm.
about 200 more podcasts are in the
Wow. Hmm.
podcast section. So there's a lot of free resources for
Great.
people
Hmm.
to even just start to navigate the
Hmm.
space themselves.
Hmm. Right. And we will have those links in the show notes.
Wonderful.
And so yeah, it's nobody can say we didn't let them know, right? They'll still
Right.
say what? But yeah,
Yeah,
so
you
we
never
will.
told me.
I know you never told me. Or they'll be trying to spell your name wrong on LinkedIn.
Yeah, well,
Um,
that's yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, so we will have that in there. And this really has been very interesting. Even though I have not been in corporate America for 20 years, it is still
Yeah.
very applicable, right?
Yeah.
Because, like I said, we have volunteer work, we have
Yeah.
clients, all of these various things. We have families. This pertains to your family just as much. And
This
so
is
this
people
has been,
space.
yeah, a wonderful conversation. And I would love to have you on again. But until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Oh, I think the final thought would just be kind of the theme of this is leveraging the humanity of your organization and the people there. When people feel seen and heard, really that's a lot of the theme today, right? They'll do great things for you, for your team, and for each other. And that's how we cultivate that joy and that love in the workplace. And it's contagious. It spreads to communities, it spreads to families, it spreads to all sorts of people. So, leverage that humanity and take care of your people, and they'll take care of you.
I love it. Well, I've been having so much fun. I'm Deb Creer. I've been speaking with Dr. Rob Leone of Black River Performance Management. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.